Well, today is week 2 of our series, Distracted, so you can see. And I'm sure you guys have identified some of the stuff up here. Last week we did the dangers of a distracted life. This week we're going to this is kind of a little tongue twister. I didn't want to just call it the week on technology, because I don't think technology is necessarily in itself bad, but the possible problems with progress. Let's try and say that. Just kidding. No, it's early. We've had our coffee. Week 2 of Distracted, here's really a summary of last week, in case you need a refresher. A distracted life is in danger of never truly seeing beauty, tasting richness, feeling depth, or knowing peace, because the room of their life is filled with unfinished puzzles piled on top of each other. Last week I took 2 puzzles and I put them together. I still have not sorted those out, but my daughter has not asked me to do that yet. I think she doesn't know. So if we could all keep that here, and those of you online could just not let her know, that'd be great. But John the Apostle tells of a time that Jesus really brought up this topic. Jesus was talking to people. This is chapter 10 of John, so it's like during the teaching time before he started getting closer to the cross. And Jesus was painting, he was talking about himself, a life lived with him, or a life lived just on our own. And he talks about Satan having a plan for our lives, that Jesus has a plan for our lives, and that the enemy of our lives has that. And he says this, and he refers to Satan as a thief. The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. And he says, this is Jesus talking, I've come that you may have life. And I love this. This is one of my favorite parts of Scripture. He doesn't just say that you may have life. We hear about that, Jesus died so that we can have life. But he says, and have it to the full. And that's what I think is happening. I think there's a lot of us in today's world that we're alive, but we would honestly say to somebody, I don't feel like I'm living in fullness. And that's not an attack. That's not to say if you said you are, that I'm going to say, no, you're not, or anything. But there are so many distractions, there are so many responsibilities, and there are so many things pulling us away from the things we truly need, that a lot of times we're filled with a life that is full of things, but it's not a full life like Jesus talked about. I was born in 1981, and I want to just talk a little bit about technology here, and maybe I'll get more amens here because you remember this, and maybe I'll get more groans from maybe the younger side of the group because you don't remember this, or I sound like I'm saying, you kids, right? What was the grandfather saying? Oh, when I was your age, I had to walk to school in the snow, uphill both ways, right? All that stuff. Got a little weird every time that a grandfather would say that. In fact, most people's grandparents never said that. It was people quoting the grandparents, so you don't know if a grandparent ever really said that. But when I was younger, this was before cell phones, if you wanted to pick somebody up at the airport, you could not call them. You could not text them. What you had to do, if I was in charge of picking you up at the airport, this is in the 90s, early 2000s, if you didn't have a cell phone, you literally had to call a number for the airport, and you would push a couple numbers, and once you got to the airline, you would type in the number of that flight, and it would tell you if it's delayed or not, and then you just went to the airport, and you just drove around until you saw the person you're supposed to pick up. It could take hours sometimes that you're just driving around. Before email or next day shipping, if you sent a message or a letter to someone, it would take about what it takes today. But it was a huge deal to get mail. Today, I feel like when we get mail, we're just oh, another box I have to break down. Or you get mail, it's typically a new business, or it says to current resident, or if you're renting a house like us, it's to the 4 or 5 different generations of people who have lived in the house that you're what do I do with this? I guess return to sender, they don't live here anymore. This is before streaming. Before streaming, the only way to watch a movie was to either know the time it was going to come on TV or what? You would go to Blockbuster or Hollywood Video or like the local, if you lived in a small town, you'd go to the one where everybody knew the guy's name and he only had the movies that he really liked there. You're like, hey, where's this new release? Isn't this out yet? And he's like, I don't like that movie. I'm not going to have it in my place, right? And they would be movies that maybe you've seen before. We would rent video games. Like we would get a Nintendo game. I think it was like $4 to have it for 2.5 days is what it was. Big deal every Friday. They would sell popcorn as you left. They tried to make it feel like you were like going into this like grand place. Whereas today, right, you can stream it. But also, if I wanted to watch a show, I could know the time it came on. We would all gather on the TV. We would try and get there early enough that if like it started right at like the 8 o'clock time, we would be there. And then if you needed to go to the bathroom or get a snack, you would go do that during the commercials, right? A couple weeks ago, my son and I were watching Hulu instead of like one of the other streaming services. And when commercials would come on and there's that little countdown, he would be like, what is this? Like, what is going on here? I'm like, hey, we don't have to rewind. Stop here complaining about this. But I was thinking about this. I was like, it's pretty ironic that when I was younger, during commercials were when you would run to the bathroom. And now we go to the bathroom so we can actually watch our shows on our phone in there. Nobody wants to confess that? We all know it's true. Show me your phones, I can show you proof. Before social media and camera phones, if you wanted to see pictures or if you wanted to show pictures of like a trip you went on, you had to take your camera or your film to a like drugstore or a store that developed film, pay them, and then come back later, pick up your photos, and if you wanted to share them with your friends, you actually had to go where your friends were. And you had to hand them this envelope full of pictures, and you haven't seen them yet. There was no screen on the phones, so you don't even know, like, I hope it turns out well. I remember going on a trip to Rome with my family, and we got back, and I was like, yeah, we were in the Sistine Chapel. They're like, which one's that? I was like, I promise we were, but none of them turned out in the Sistine Chapel, right? I like new technology. I can go through this and I can talk about this kind of thing. There are obvious benefits. I am not here saying that it was better when I was younger. There are so many benefits to the idea of next day shipping that if there's something that I need tomorrow, I don't have to even go to a store to get it. I could order it on the phone that is in my backpack over there. In fact, I could order it technically by just saying it to an Alexa device in my house and have something tomorrow because we live close to a big Amazon hub. Like there are plenty of benefits. But today we're going to talk about the possible problems with progress. The things that might come with progress, coupled with those things. I would like to say that every strength has a shadow side. If you have a strength, let's say you have a strength, your strength is like this big, strong boulder in your life. It's something that guides you, it's something that protects you. But when the sun comes up, that big boulder casts a shadow, and there's a shadow side to strengths of yours and a shadow side to the strengths of progress. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but there's this small company called Facebook that started several years ago. It started just being something for college students to be able to find dates and to be able to connect after college. And it was started by two people, a guy named Mark Zuckerberg and a guy named Sean Parker came along a little later after Mark Zuckerberg screwed over all of the people that helped him start it at the beginning, right? If you've seen the movie, though, The Social Network, Mark Zuckerberg's friend, Sean Parker, he was actually the guy that started Napster, too. He was played by Justin Timberlake. If that's a reason for you to want to watch it, that could be a thing. But Sean Parker left Facebook and with millions of dollars later. He was the first president, and he was interviewed by Axios magazine in 2017. And they were asking him about social media and how like there's all kinds of things now like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook is this huge money-making thing. And here's what the first president of Facebook said. The thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them, was all about this. How do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible? And that means that we need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while, because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever. And that's going to get you to contribute more content. And that's going to get you more likes and more comments, which is going to make you want to have more content. And the cycle begins to steal your time. And then he ends with this. It's social validation feedback loop. Exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with. And this is the part that just like gives me shudders. Because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. What he's saying is they were able to get people to get Facebook and all of these things because they hacked our brains and know, I know how to get you to do something even if you don't have time for it. You will make time for it, sacrificing other things to be a part of the product that we have. A 2021 study showed that the average smartphone user looks at their phones 3 hours and 15 minutes a day. And this was kind of crazy. They went into it a little deeper, that amounts to the average of 58 times that we look at our phone. So I know what you guys are going to do now. You're going to be really conscious about how many times you look at your phone, right? During this time. And those of you watching online, right, you might be watching on your phone and you're like, does this count? We'll just say this doesn't count today, right? 58 times, and the majority of times, 52% of those times they looked at them were within 3 minutes of the time they looked at it before the previous time. There was a study done that showed, and I could quote this out of Chicago University, that showed, and they had people go in and they had to complete all these tasks and stuff. And the first time they did it, they had their own cell phone in there. The second time they had to do different tasks, they had a phone that was just provided by the place that said, you can use this, you guys can stream, you can do whatever you want, listen to music, whatever you want. And the last time they did these puzzles, they didn't. They said that when someone's personal cell phone is just in the room with them, their productivity went down 40%. And it gets worse. The normalcy of web searches, online shopping, next day delivery have caused U.S. culture to become obsessed with instant what? Instant gratification. And the unhindered ability to distract ourselves from difficult or stressful situations. The technology and progress have been a way for us to fix the problem of actually looking at my life. That in the moments that I don't want to deal with this problem, I don't want to deal with this stress, or I'm just too tired to do the dishes, I can just get on my phone and find something. Is it something I need? No, it's just a Jim Gaffigan video that I've probably seen before. But man, it gives me that dopamine hit. It helps me feel good. I don't think about for a moment what is actually going on in my life that I could probably fix in 30 seconds. But it's easier for me to spend a few minutes on my phone. Linda Stone, someone who used to work for Microsoft, said, we are living in a pandemic of continuous partial attention. I'll say that again. Continuous partial attention. John Eldredge, in his book, Get Your Life Back, says, let's be honest, we prefer distraction. The more distracted we are, the less present we are to our souls and our various hurts, our needs, our disappointments, boredom, and fears. It's a short-term relief with long-term consequences. And he says, what blows my mind is how totally normal this has become. It's the new socially acceptable addiction. Now, I can cast a doom and gloom on the shadow side of progress. But let's be honest. Two things are very true today. One, there is zero desire in me today. This is not a sermon. I grew up in like a time where I saw like churches like boycotting like technology and like media, and like there was a time when you would like get rid of your non-Christian music, whatever that means, and stuff like that. I'm not leading that kind of a movement. If you want to lead that, I won't even join it, kind of thing. That's not today. I'm not going to pitch some utopian like dream where we would all farm and not have technology, right? And then probably die of some disease that's been cured for a long time because we're out in the middle of nowhere, right? We're not going to buy land, do that kind of thing. But also, I use technology a lot. Like on my desk right here is an iPad. On my wrist is an Apple Watch. In my bag is a MacBook Pro and my iPhone. At home, we have an Alexa device that we use for timers and whatever she says that we should use it for, that kind of thing. Sometimes we don't know certain things are happening in the world, but Alexa puts it up on the screen for us. I'm someone here who lives a life almost dependent upon technology. The question today is not, should I have technology in my life? The question is, am I using technology or is technology using me? Because there are only two different dealers. There are only two different organizations in the world that call their clients users. Social media and phone companies and technology. And what's the other one? Drug dealers. That there's some sort of a way that we need to be putting a filter on as Christians, as people who are following Jesus, to realize that if I want to have my eyes on Jesus, if the life that I live, I want to build my life according to his love and his life, there are going to be things that as I'm running this race that are going to tangle me up and get in my way. And not all of them are evil. Some of them are called progress. This entire series is a 6-week challenge to purposely evaluate what is truly worthy of our time, attention, and devotion. So Kurt read it earlier. You know, it's not a long section today, but it's loaded. It was just 3 verses, and we read that last one. This text is not explicitly about technology. Jesus did not have an iPhone. The disciples did not have Twitter, or we might have more to go on, right? Some photos and different things. But what's beautiful about God's word is that there are timeless principles that can be applied to the way we live our lives today. Back then, the addictions may have been different than they are today. The progress that distracted us may have been different than they are today, but they still exist today. Today, as we talk about the possible problems of technology in our lives, we're leaning into God's timeless wisdom. I told you that. So here are just 3 observations from 3 different verses. Let me read verse 1. Okay, it says, "Let us run with perseverance." We got that, Ryan? "And let us run with perseverance, the race marked out for us." Observation number 1 is this, that there's a purpose to this life. There's a race that we're running. Like every one of us, when we get up in the morning, there is something that we are on our way towards. That every day is building towards something. That every day there's this purpose we have. And I know that there's a common, we can see it in our culture. We can see it in commercials. We can see it different ways that there's a message that's counter to this that says, life is pretty meaningless. Just do what you want. Nothing you do today is going to affect the rest of your life because your life doesn't really matter unless you enjoy it. That's a short-term, very narrow view that I believed a lot without even knowing it for a lot of my life. Because I just gave into whatever hungers I had. Now, if we were to really look at athletes that are running an actual race, this is just an allegory race. But if we were to really look into that, we would say, that's like saying if I'm running a 3-mile race, what I do in the first mile doesn't really matter. I can just make it up in the 2nd and 3rd mile. For any of us who have ran before, for any of us who have walked before or hiked before, you are much better off if you have a steady or healthy pace the entire time. That your eyes are open the first mile to pick up on things that your body is telling you about your pace, about how hard the terrain is, about the way the weather's affecting you, and everything about the race. That actually, those that finish a race really strong are the ones that are learning the first mile, the 2nd mile, and applying it the 2nd and 3rd. In my life, working in church, I mean this not to be too funny, but I've gotten to interact with a lot of senior adults. A lot, not just through funerals and visitations, but also just attending great churches and working at great churches where I love people and I love being around people that are older to learn from them, but also just they tell great stories and they remember you. They remember your name. And here's two things that I've noticed. And maybe I just want you to think about like some senior adults in your life, people in their 70s and 80s, I would say the fourth quarter of their life, people you're related to, people you know, or even people like on TV, celebrities. There's usually two extremes when it comes to people that are in the fourth quarter of their life. They are either the sweetest, kindest, generous people, great listeners, always calling you honey, always just thankful that you're there, or the grumpiest, kind of mean, kind of distant. You're kind of worried about them and kind of trying to avoid them. That what ends up happening is life kind of takes a toll on you, and the decisions that we make in our life are forming us. See, in my 20s, I didn't know anybody who was like really evil or just grumpy all the time. And I didn't really know anybody that was just like super sweet and generous, because we were still being formed. People were just cool. They were just my friends. They were just people in my life. We were still being formed. We were learning as we were going. In your 30s, responsibility starts to pile on, whether it's responsibility you wanted or responsibility that was just handed to you, given to you. And you start to see the way that your decisions in your 20s may have affected you, whether it was dietary decisions, whether it was relationship decisions or spiritual decisions. And you start reevaluating, can I really handle this responsibility with all the daily habits and decisions I was making in my 20s? And then now that I'm in my 40s, I'm recognizing it's all about processing everything that you've seen others go through, learning from your mistakes, learning from others. And here's the main thing about life having purpose. When you look back, you recognize not only time that you wasted, but you recognize that you are the person that is the sum total of the decisions that you made before now. That every single day when we make decisions, they don't just impact that day, but they impact forming you into who you are. And that the person you are when you're 70 or 80, when you're setting up whether or not you're going to finish well, where people at your funeral can tell the truth or they have to lie for it to be a great day, is based upon the decisions we made our whole lives. There was a guy in his 70s that when I lived in Tucson, Arizona, we got together every week. And he was a sweet old guy, like didn't have a lot of family. And so he just wanted to get together and like I get to pray with him and I just listened to him tell stories. Sometimes I would play piano and we would sing old songs I didn't know. And a lot of the old songs in church, like he taught me, I didn't even know them from like attending church, just from him. And he was reflecting on his life one day, and this is kind of my memory of how he said it, and we've got it on the screen. He said it this way, and he wasn't like some college professor, all right? Like he wasn't like, I wasn't expecting something really deep to come out of his mouth in that moment. He said, you live every single day, Jared, knowing you are steering your life somewhere, and now that I'm in my 70s, my brakes and my steering wheel don't work like they used to. I laughed when he said that. Because he was confessing, he said, look, my whole life I've been trying to navigate and I've been trying to do the things I need to do to build my life to where it's at. And now I'm at a place where my brakes and my steering wheel don't work as well. I'll never forget that. You know, we hear thousands of words a day, but there's certain words that we never forget. And that was some of them. Stephen Covey, author, inspirational writer. He says, I am not a product of my circumstances. I am a product of my decisions. Are we ever done being formed? No. Are we ever past having hope for our lives? No. Can we ever not get up and finish the race well? No. We are all still being formed. That I love that God is the God of second, third, fourth, and 100th chances. I'm old enough to tell you that not everyone ends their life well, though. That today, the decisions we make are decisions that are forming us into who we will become. I like how the writer of Hebrews refers to us as a race. Our life has purpose. that when we leave here, being here today, again, is like an inch closer to the people that we want to be. Where we go, what we eat, who we interact with, the words we use, the steps we take to get healthy, they are all decisions inching us closer to who we will be. In fact, the things that I choose to give my time to are inching me closer to who I want to be. Okay, you remember that Covey quote that I just did, right? We've got that verse, surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, right? You remember that Covey quote? He says that, like, it's made of decisions. Our life is made of decisions. I agree with 95% of that. Like, I know I put it up here. I should be 100%. But here's why I only agree with 95%. Because I have interacted with people who have addictions. And I've been addicted. I've been in places in my life where I felt like my decision-making was not where it should be. And there's kind of like a conservative definition and more liberal definition of like addiction. And probably the more like liberal like definition would be that addiction takes away all sense of making decisions. You just have no control. And probably the more like conservative way would be that your decision-making is numbed, right? You're not as strong as you should be. Whatever the definition, addiction takes away that ability for us to be able to fully make decisions. And if you have people in your life, or if you have struggled with addiction before, and I'm not saying it has to be something like what my generation struggled with, right? Which was a lot of drugs, that kind of thing. That was big then. In my research of like technology and progress and the effects that it has on us, addiction came up a lot. And that was really controversial. There were some that were like, we can't call it addiction. They were usually people that like were like in the tech industry that would say that, but doctors and school psychologists and different people would say, actually, people are so addicted to their phones. They're looking at it way more than 58 times a day. 58 times is how many times they look at it, but we're thinking about our phones even more than that. But there is hope, because every single study that talks about addiction in any sort of way has one common denominator for getting better. And that's this: you need people around you. And I kind of wrote this down. The only common component in breaking addiction's power is the presence of a supportive circle of people in your life who want you to be healthy as much as they want you to be healthy, or as they want themselves to be healthy as well. I'll read that again. The only common component in breaking addiction's power is the presence of a supportive circle of people in your life who want you to be healthy as much as they want to be healthy themselves. Observation number 2, living in community helps. Super simple, right? Like no super like in-depth stuff. Living in community helps us avoid distraction. Living in community with people who care about us, who want the best for your life as much as they want life for you. Show me your friends, I'll show you your, does anybody know this? Your future. Because if I'm headed in a direction and I'm trying to pull along people, sooner or later, I'm going to have a weak day. And if they're not pulling me forward as well, I'm going to get pulled backwards and not be the person I want to be. I love this term that the writer of Hebrews uses, the great cloud of witnesses. I just kind of like a cloud. I just imagine when you're like in an airplane, if you've ever flown before, and they go through a cloud, you know, you look out the window, if the person by the window is willing to have it open, and all you see is this cloud. But you know there's more out there, but the cloud is just all around you. It's all consuming. It's not hindering the plane, but it's just like all around. I'm sure there's some level that it's hindering the plane a little bit, but you don't feel it. It's not like turbulence when you go through. You're just in a cloud. And I just love that idea of community, that the community is all around you and it's all consuming and it's with you. But it's not something that's like making your life harder. I run better when I run with other people. I run better when I hear the stories of those who have run before me. And the reason that helplines exist, you guys know what helplines are, right? Like all the commercials for sports betting now, if you watch any NFL, sports betting is like million, I think it was 413 million that sports betting companies are investing in NFL, like commercials and merchandise and stuff. If you look at all the sports betting commercials, go ahead and put that up. We've got a popular figure up there. He's for PointsBet. They've got down here, new customers only, must be present. And then it says here, over here, if you know someone, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call this number, 1-800-GAMBLER, for crisis counseling. Here's something that I'll tell you is never present in any helpline, any sports betting ad, or any sort of like ad for this. They always say, call the helpline. They never say, be a helpline. There's never a component that says, you know what? Actually, the person struggling needs you in their life. Actually, if you're struggling, you need people in your life. Calling the number, this is basically, I mean, this is the component that says, we're going to do what we have to do so that we don't look like the villain here. But people are falling to addiction every day. And if we just put a helpline number up there, that'll be great. But Scripture is serious when it says we can move forward in our life. We can get past the things in our life that are hurting us if we have a great cloud of witnesses. Years ago, I sat in a room as a young pastor. I was in my 20s, probably like 24, 25. This was before I had kids, so I knew very little that I know now about like responsibility and life and stuff like that. I don't think I'd had much of a hard life leading up to that. And I'm sitting in this room very much like this one. I was sitting in like the safe zone, like not right in front of the speaker, like to the side, not in the front, not in the very back. And the speaker had been, I was youngest in the room by probably 15 to 20 years. It was a room of about 100 people. And the speaker got up there, this is like the second or third day, and said, "Good morning, saints." And everyone said, "Good morning." So let's do that. Good morning, saints. Good morning. Yeah. And instead of just going into it, he then said, "Good morning, sinners." To which we all paused and then went, "Good morning." There's a picture there. You know, saint is something that we use in church, and if in the Catholic tradition, our Catholic cousins, I like to say, saint is something that you earn. Saint is something that says they've got a halo on their head and all the glass depictions and statues. But it's also used to describe people who go to church. That one of the main reasons people don't go to church today, like if you've got friends or family that you've invited that haven't come or that used to go to church, it's usually because they've been let down by people that are called saints. And what I believe a healthy church needs to be is a place where we understand that there's a tension and a dualism in that we are God's people, we are redeemed and we are loved, but also that we are sinners. That there are things in our life that if they were put on the 5 o'clock news, there's no place, or we would run for the hills. That if the things that I struggle with were on the screen right now, I would be embarrassed. But there are people in my life, there are a great cloud of witnesses that say, "But Jared, we believe in the good in you, that we're going to keep running this race." I believe that for us to be a healthy church, not just that has more people show up, or not just that has like healthy things that we do in the community or has a good reputation, but to be a church that like actually 10 years from now would be a church we still want to be a part of. We need to be a church that is a great cloud of witnesses. And I wrote this down. A great cloud of witnesses is not a group of saints and perfect people. It's a healthy circle of people running in the same direction together. And then I added, with Jesus. It's not a group of saints and perfect people. It's a healthy circle of people running in the same direction together. People that we need in our lives and people who need us in their lives. If you today think there is no one here that needs me in their life, I have nothing to offer, then you're wrong. And if you're here today thinking there's no one in this room that has anything to offer me that I need for running this race, you're wrong. Whether you are considered young, or I'll just say not as young. Observation number 3, and this is the last one. And I think this is the most practical one. We've been doing a lot of philosophy and just fact sharing, but this is where we really start to apply this to our lives. Let us throw off everything that hinders, the sin that so easily entangles, And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus. Observation number 3 is that we're given 3 very clear action steps here. And you could probably divide them up a little differently. But the first 2, we have to notice. Go ahead and put that scripture back on the screen. The first 2 are about getting rid of things. The third one is something that we actually need to add to our lives. So the first 2, let us throw off everything that hinders. This word "and," you know what it means? And. It means there are 2 things. These are 2 separate things. Let us throw off everything that hinders and throw off the sin that so easily entangles. How many times in our life can we say there are things that hinder us? Like the drive here, if there's something in the middle of the road, that's going to kind of hinder us. But then there's things also that entangle us. That there are things that you might have to swerve out of the way for. It kind of slows you down in your life. But also there's things that wrap around us. Things that just won't go away. And a lot of times in the Christian world, we say, I'm just in a difficult season. It typically means I don't just have things in my way right now. I have something that I'm carrying that I've been carrying for a while. I have something that's latched onto my life or the life of a loved one. And if you're a parent in here, right, we're only as happy as our saddest kid. That when they carry something, when they're entangled in something, I mean, we're entangled too. Because that's what love looks like. But the third one, let us fix our eyes on Jesus. And the rest of chapter 2 says, the author and the perfecter of our faith. That I love that the author, the one who wrote our faith, created us, but also the one who perfects us, the one who improves us, the one that forms us. Fixing our eyes on Jesus is not easy, though, because there are so many distractions out there. I'm going to show a video here that maybe you've seen before. I saw it in grad school, and then I was told before. I think everybody's seen this. If you haven't, here's the goal. So it's going to be some basketball players, and there's some in white jerseys, and there's some in black jerseys. And it's really just observation to see if you can count how many times the white team passes the ball. So if I took the ball and I threw it to Brett, how many would that be? That's 1. Good job. High school education right there, okay? That's 1. He throws it back, that's 2, okay? So we got that queued up? All right, don't look at me. So see if you can count them. All right, we got the 4 white team, 4 black team. 1 ball. 1. All right, say your number. Did you get 13? All right, keep watching. Did anybody see the bear? Now the screen's a little washed out, so we'll see. Do you see the bear? You see the bear right there? All right, you can cut it. So that video was made in London because people kept hitting bicyclers, and they were talking about you need to be aware of more than what's going on than just your life, right? Isn't it a perfect demonstration of how if I'm so focused on this or this, I can miss a dancing, moonwalking bear right in front of me? Fixing our eyes on Jesus, we might miss some things. There might be some things in our life that we miss. And the question is, the things that I miss, are they worth it? Because sometimes we don't focus on Jesus because I'm so afraid I'm going to miss other things that are happening. I'm going to miss this. I'm going to miss this. I'm young. I don't want to miss out on being young. My kids are at this stage, or I've got these opportunities. To fix our eyes on Jesus actually means that we might sacrifice being a part of certain things that we've had in our lives for a long time. I wrote this down, and the idea that it is easier for most people to add Jesus than it is to get rid of other things in their life. That what ends up happening is we get this picture of if I can just add Jesus to my life, if I can just start going to church, if I can just maybe start praying before a meal, or if I can just start like this, adding Jesus to my life, and the race that I run will get easier. But actually what Jesus says is, fix your eyes on me alone and let me take care of everything else. He says, seek first my kingdom and my righteousness, and all the other things will be taken care of by me. Now, that doesn't mean that Jesus is all of a sudden going to come down and go to work for you because I'm just praying all the time. I don't have to go to work anymore. I don't have to pay my bills. But that what is on display in our culture today is that our focus is the thing that they are spending millions and billions of dollars to get from us. And Jesus has been saying for thousands of years, fix your eyes on me. Fix your eyes on me. Throw off everything that entangles and the sin. See, not everything in our lives that tangles us up is sin. It said and, because there are things that get in our way, and there are things that are like addictions in our life that are hurting us. I'm not sure, during our reflection time, you guys can start that music now. During our reflection time today, I just want you to reflect upon that. What is keeping you from fixing your eyes on Jesus? And I guess I'll explain it a little better. This was about a year and a half ago now. I was really convicted of how much time I was spending on my phone. I'll just confess this. I think my wife's the only one that knows this. I was like at night in bed, just addicted to looking at reels on YouTube. And then I had a bunch of podcasters that I was like sports, politics, media. And once you start mindlessly scrolling, I'm just speaking for me. Once I started mindlessly scrolling, like once in a while I'd have this thought of, what time is it? I probably need to sleep. Or you know what? My kids are going to come. My kids have needed me. And I start thinking about all the other things. But you know what? I just kept on going. I was glued to it. And there was a moment where I just broke down because one of my kids like drew a picture of me, right? And I had my phone. And I went, I have to do something about this because I'm going to miss out. This is forming me into somebody I don't want to be. Is it evil? Not really. But it's hindering me. And so this is what I did, and I can tell you more about it if you want to grab coffee sometime, but I made my smartphone into a dumb phone. I took email off my phone. I took web browsing off my phone. I took all the push notifications off my phone. All that comes up is when I get a text message from somebody now. And I removed a couple other things that every time I was just addicted to, I was like, all right, Lord, like I am on this phone more than I am with anything else that really matters to me. If someone were to ask me, what is most important to you? I would never list my phone and social media. But if they looked at my schedule and my life, they would say, well, no, this is what's important to you. And I can tell you that the first thing that happened the first month is I was really driven. I had a lot of adrenaline for it. I was like, I'm going to win this thing. My life's going to be different. You know what happened? Other people in my life started getting annoyed that I wasn't responding to emails like right away. But you know who didn't complain? The people that I live with. They never said, hey, I wish you were on your phone more. Right? You know who didn't complain? Me. I started giving my phone a bedtime because I wasn't really as addicted to it anymore. Second month, my phone would be just in the room or in the bedroom, which probably isn't the best place to keep it because then I find it later. I started to recognize I was doing things on my computer instead of my phone, and that took a lot more commitment to get there. And I'm going to tell you that I still love to be able to go on YouTube and catch up with certain influencers and different podcasts that I love, especially during NBA playoffs and different things. Like I still have all of these devices. But I can tell you that today I walk in so much more freedom and so much more availability. But I don't know as much like stuff that I used to know. I gave up things that now seem so meaningless. Right? Like I don't have a reel to share with you to make you laugh, make you like me. But what I chose and the life that Jesus offers is a life lived to the fullest, where we might not be able to say, I was able to numb. We might say, I've dealt and seen my life surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses as opposed to surrounded by devices. So we're just going to reflect now. We're just going to take some time before Kirk comes up. But what I want to offer today is that if this is something that's convicting for you, I'm not going to ask you to lay your phone here and leave it, right? But I know every one of us here has a phone in our pocket, and we live kind of in bondage to it. That our lives right now can be altered by the phone vibrating in our pocket right now, no matter what it is. And that kind of control entangles us. So my desire right now, as we pray, is not for us to just lay it down and say, I don't need this anymore. If the Lord says that to you, test it, have someone pray with you, talk to people. But if maybe, just maybe today you're saying, you know what, I don't want to give as much time and attention and devotion to technology as I have. I want to give it to something else. I want to fix my eyes on Jesus. I don't want to miss the important things in my life. The things that a year later, can't even remember why it was so important. Let me pray for you, and then we'll take time to reflect. Well, God,